The Cyclist, by Erik Røde, 1755. Read by Richard D. Eisenhower. Continued.
Act 2, Friendship. Chapter 5, A Reunion. Scene 22, Carlo and Ponti. Exactly a week and a couple of days had passed since my initial encounter with Carlo and Ponti. On a pleasantly warm Thursday afternoon, I found myself cycling back to their picturesque cottage. The memories of our first meeting had stayed with me, and I was eager to reconnect with the kind Italian couple. As I pedaled along the winding road that led to their home, the scenery seemed even more enchanting than before. The rolling hills were a patchwork of vibrant green, kissed by the golden rays of the Italian sun. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the distant song of birds, creating a sensory tapestry that was impossible to resist. Carlo, with his jovial demeanor, had gone into town to procure the necessary ingredients for his culinary creations. As I approached the cottage, I noticed Ponti tending to her garden. Her weathered face broke into a warm smile as she recognized me, her hands gently caressing the velvety petals of a rose. Ponti spoke, her hands covered in soil as she continued to tend to her beloved plants, and said, "The flowers, they are like our children. We care for them, and in return, they bring beauty to our lives." I replied, "It's a beautiful garden you have here, Ponti. It must be a lot of work." She chuckled and said, "See, it is work, but it is also a labor of love. This land, it has been in Carlo's family for generations, and we cherish it." I nodded and smiled warmly, responding, "I admire your connection to the land. It's something I've come to appreciate more since I started spending time here." Ponti, her eyes crinkling at the corners, smiled back and said, "You see, my friend, life is about these moments. The laughter, the stories, the beauty of the world around us. It's a gift." As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting a golden hue over the landscape, I felt a sense of peace in the company of Ponti. The simplicity of the moment, the scent of blooming flowers, and the distant chirping of birds created a tranquil backdrop to our conversation. I leaned back in the rustic chair on the porch, taking in the breathtaking view, and replied, "You're absolutely right, Ponti. These moments are a gift, and I'm grateful to share them with you and Carlo." She nodded in agreement, her eyes reflecting the wisdom of a life well lived, then said, "Carlo will be back soon, and we will have a meal together. It will be a celebration of friendship and good food." With a contented sigh, I settled in to wait for Carlo's return, knowing that this reunion would be another chapter in the unexpected and delightful story of our friendship. Scene 23, The Welcoming Feast. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm, golden glow over the landscape, Carlo's familiar figure emerged on the horizon. He approached with purpose, a wicker basket filled with fresh produce swinging at his side. The gentle breeze carried hints of the countryside's fragrances, earthy soil, blooming flowers, and the promise of a delightful evening ahead. Carlo greeted me with a hearty laugh, his eyes crinkling at the corners with genuine warmth. His bare hug enveloped me, conveying the familiarity of an old friend. It was as though the passage of a mere week had been rendered inconsequential in the face of our burgeoning friendship. Ponti, her hand still bearing the traces of garden work, welcomed me with a smile that radiated the same kindness and sincerity that had marked our first encounter. Together, we carried the basket into the cozy kitchen, where the very air seemed to shimmer with the promise of a culinary masterpiece. The aromas that greeted us were nothing short of enchanting, each scent teasing our senses with its savory allure. Carlo moved with the grace of an artist, his culinary expertise evident in every precise motion. Carlo spoke first, his voice filled with passionate devotion to the art of cooking, saying, "Tonight, we shall embark on a culinary journey, my friend," he declared with a flourish, as he meticulously stirred the risotto, ensuring that every grain absorbed the rich flavors that swirled in the pot. Ponti, her hands a blur of activity, added, "And you, my dear, shall savor the very essence of our Italian home-cooked feast." My anticipation grew with each passing moment, heightened by the delicate clinking of plates and the melodious pop of a wine bottle being uncorked. The deep, crimson red of the wine caught the soft lamplight, promising an exquisite complement to the forthcoming meal. We gathered around the table, a scene of rustic elegance bathed in the gentle glow of the lamps. Carlo's smile was infectious, and the camaraderie that had grown between us over the past week enveloped the room like a warm embrace. Carlo served the risotto with the precision of a maestro conducting an orchestra, each plate receiving equal attention, and the aroma was nothing short of heavenly. Carlo spoke again, his voice a reflection of the pride and joy he took in his craft. "To share a meal is to share one's heart," he said, raising his glass in a toast. We echoed his sentiment, clinking our glasses and savoring the moment. The tender calamari followed, a tribute to Carlo's expertise with seafood. Each bite was a journey to the sea, a taste of its depths and mysteries, and it left an indelible mark on my senses. As we indulged in this feast, laughter and stories filled the room, bridging the divide between our cultures and languages. It was a communion of souls, a celebration of the shared moments and memories that transcended boundaries. Carlo's son, once a distant figure, now felt closer as I recounted my experiences in America. The evening unfolded like a symphony of flavors and tales, the connection between us deepening with each course. The cottage, adorned with handmade linens and delicate plates, bore witness to our celebration, a celebration of friendship, culinary artistry, and the profound beauty that can emerge from the simplest of moments. Scene 24. A journey through taste and time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Italian countryside, Carlo, Ponti, and I continued our feast. Each bite of the delectable food Carlo had prepared felt like a voyage through the flavors of Italy itself. The warmth of the cottage and the fragrance of the dishes filled the air, creating a cocoon of comfort and camaraderie. Carlo spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of our shared experience. "You know," he said, his eyes twinkling with nostalgia, "I used to be quite the cyclist in my younger days. These hills," he gestured to the landscape outside, "they've witnessed many a race between friends and me." Ponti, her gaze fixed on Carlo, added with a fond smile, "Ah, yes, and those races, they were always followed by hearty meals just like this one." I replied, my own memories triggered by their words, "It's amazing how food and cycling seem to go hand in hand in this part of the world. I remember riding through the streets of New York, stopping at food carts for a quick bite." Carlo leaned back in his chair, a look of contentment on his face, and continued, "You see, my friend, food and stories. They are the threads that weave the tapestry of our lives." Ponti nodded in agreement, her hands gesturing as she spoke. "Yes, and every meal, every story shared, brings us closer. It's a celebration of life." As we savored each bite, Carlo's tales of his youth flowed like a gentle river. He spoke of the winding roads he used to race along, the exhilaration of the wind in his hair, and the friendships forged on those journeys. I added, "It's incredible how cycling can connect people, no matter where they're from. It's a universal language of sorts." Ponti, her eyes gleaming with pride for her husband, chimed in, "Carlo has always been a man of passion. Whether it's cycling or cooking, he puts his heart into everything." Between bites of the savory dishes, I shared stories of my own upbringing in bustling New York City. The hustle and bustle of city life, the blaring horns of taxis, and the thrill of racing down the avenues on my bike came alive in the quiet cottage. Carlo and Ponti listened with rapt attention, the cultural exchange between us strengthening the bonds of our friendship. The evening unfolded like a symphony of flavors and tales, each course accompanied by the music of shared memories. Laughter filled the air, and the cottage seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of three friends from different corners of the world coming together in the name of friendship, food, and the beauty of storytelling. Once again, I was overwhelmed by the sensation that the generational and geographical gaps between us had dissolved as I recounted my experiences in America. This brought us closer together through the enchantment of shared narratives. Scene 25. A heartfelt connection. As the last remnants of our sumptuous meal were cleared from the table, a profound sense of contentment settled over us. The bond that had formed between Carlo, Ponti, and myself had transcended the limitations of language and distance, weaving us together into a tapestry of shared instances and newfound friendship. Above us, the night sky began to reveal its secrets, stars emerging like distant, twinkling gems. Carlo, with his characteristic warmth, suggested that we move outside to enjoy the cool night air. We settled on the porch, our faces bathed in the soft, silvery glow of the moon. Carlo, the epitome of Italian hospitality, poured small glasses of grappa, a traditional Italian digestive, and we raised our glasses in a silent yet deeply meaningful toast. The silence that followed was anything but awkward. It was a testimony to the unspoken understanding that had grown between us. Carlo spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of our collective encounter. "Thank you," he said, his words filled with genuine emotion, and added, "You've brought a piece of the world to our doorstep, and we're forever grateful for the connection we've found." I smiled warmly, touched by his words, and replied, "Carlo, Ponti, it's been an incredible journey for me as well. Your hospitality and friendship mean more to me than I can express." Ponti, her eyes filled with a gentle kindness, chimed in with a few words in Italian that I didn't fully understand, but her warm tone and expressive gestures conveyed her appreciation. Carlo, always the storyteller, began to share tales from his youth, his animated expressions painting vivid pictures of his cycling days. "I remember cycling through these very hills," he said, his eyes sparkling with nostalgia. Then he added, "The wind in my hair, the scent of the fields in my nose. It was freedom, my friend." Ponti nodded, her eyes twinkling with fondness as she listened to Carlo's stories. It was evident that their bond ran deep, forged over decades of shared adventures and unwavering companionship. They had weathered life's storms together, finding solace and joy in the simplicity of their existence. As the night deepened and the stars shone brighter, I realized that this was more than just a meal shared under the stars. It was a celebration of life, of love, and of the unbreakable bonds that form when hearts open to one another. And as I gazed at the vast expanse of the Italian countryside, I knew that the memory of this evening would forever be etched in my heart, a tribute to the magic that can be found in the simplest of moments and the profound connections that can be forged when we open ourselves to the world and its people. Scene 26, the tale of Carlo's youth. Amidst my visits to Carlo and Ponti's cottage, a captivating chapter of Carlo's past unfolded against the backdrop of the idyllic Italian countryside. The rolling hills and vibrant landscapes seemed to echo the rich history that Carlo held within his heart. By now, a period marked by healing after the ravages of World War II. Yet, Carlo's story reached further back, stretching into the turbulent days of World War I. Carlo, now aged and weathered, had once been a young man of around 15 or 17 during those tumultuous years. In a small village cradled by the embrace of the mountains, Carlo's family flourished amidst the picturesque beauty of Italy. Their roots were deep, connections extending across the countryside. Even in times of uncertainty, family bonds remained unbreakable. Carlo leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant as he began to share the stories of his youth. The lines on his face seemed to fade away, and for a moment, he was transported back to those bygone days. It was a different world back then, Carlo mused, his voice carrying the weight of nostalgia. He paused for a moment and added, "The mountains, they were our protectors, and the fields, our livelihood." Ponti, her gaze fixed on Carlo, chimed in, "Carlo's family, they were known for their vineyards. The grapes they grew, they were like precious jewels of the land." Carlo nodded in agreement, a hint of a smile playing on his lips, then he added, "Indeed, the vineyards were our pride. I remember helping my father tend to the vines, my young hands learning the delicate art of winemaking." As Carlo spoke, I could almost feel the warmth of the Italian sun on my skin and the scent of ripe grapes in the air. His words painted a vivid picture of a young boy coming of age amidst the splendor of the Italian countryside. Carlo continued, "But those were also times of great upheaval. World War I cast its shadow over our village. The world was changing, and as a young man, I couldn't help but be drawn into the currents of history." The cottage itself seemed to come alive with the echoes of Carlo's past. The flickering lamplight created dancing shadows on the walls, and the soft sigh of the wind outside added an ethereal quality to the storytelling. Ponte interjected, her voice gentle as she recalled, then said, "Carlo, he was brave. He joined in our protection, fighting for our village, our home." Carlo's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I glimpsed the young man he had once been, the courage, the determination, the spirit of a bygone era. "It was a time of sacrifice," Carlo said, his voice filled with a deep sense of history, and added, "but it was also a time of unity. Our village stood together, and in the face of adversity, we found strength in our bonds." As Carlo's narrative continued to unfold, I realized that the Italian countryside wasn't just a backdrop. It was a living demonstration to the enduring spirit of Carlo's youth, a time when the land itself bore witness to the resilience and unity of a community facing the trials of history.
The Cyclist, by Erik Røde, 1755. Read by Richard D. Eisenhower.